Well, folks, the 2028 presidential election may be 3.5 years away, but Democrats and Republicans are already trying to lay the groundwork for 2028. Republicans need to figure out how are they going to survive in the era post-Donald Trump. Donald Trump will not be on the ballot in 2028, but we have a little secret for you. We are going to discuss him. We're actually going to do him last, so stick around to the very end to figure out what our thoughts are on Donald Trump running in the 2028 election. But Democrats, they need to lay the groundwork. They want to win back the presidency from Donald Trump, from the Republicans in 2028, and they've got a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. Right now, their popularity of their party is at all-time lows. You have polls that range anywhere from 20 to 25% approval rating for the Democrat Party. Like we said, the lowest we have seen in decades. But today, we are going to be doing a tier list. We've done one for the Democrat primary, who would be best suited to win a Democrat primary, who would be best suited to win a Republican primary, and now we are going to be doing who's going to be best suited to win a general election, who is best suited for the 2028 election. And obviously, we added in this time. In the last two videos, we've done it where F just meant you shouldn't have been in the race. Now we have F plus, you just shouldn't be in this race to begin with. Your name shouldn't even be in consideration. So let's just start off. I don't want to start off with someone too crazy like AOC, because let's just kind of warm this up a little bit before we get too out there. But let's start with someone like a Dean Phillips. Dean Phillips, he was the representative who represents Minnesota's 3rd congressional district, I believe. I believe he was elected back in 2018 and ran against President Biden in the Democrat primary in 2024, eventually dropped out, endorsed Biden, but was very critical and was, raising the alarm bells months, if not years in advance of where other Democrats were. So, Dean Phillips, he's much more of a moderate Democrat. He was a business owner. Ultimately, he's a Democrat at the end of the day, but he was much more moderate. If we're talking in a general election, I would put him at a C. Ultimately, he does not have the name recognition that is actually required to, at least I don't think, he doesn't have that name recognition that would be required to win a general election, especially against a popular Republican. I think it would be very, very difficult. Now, you put some crazy Republican up there, okay, I could see maybe Dean Phillips winning, but ultimately, he's kind of a middle-of-the-road candidate. Ultimately, if he were even running in the primary, he's running for a cabinet position or a VP slot. It's just as simple as that. Now, let's move on to the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. She is a two-term governor from Michigan, very popular, unfortunately, popular governor. Sorry, that was a little politically biased. I'm trying to be a little more unbiased when I'm doing some of these here. But she won her re-election back in 2022 by roughly about 10 points against Tudor Dixon and against former AG she beat back in 2018. Now, obviously, this was initially, this seat was held by a Republican. Previous to that, you go back to 2014, you see these were held by Republicans. Now, you can see Democrats came through in 2018 and swept these races, and Michigan was no exception. Now, granted, I think that Gretchen Whitmer, she has the ability to have wide range and appeal. Look, she got a lot of popularity under her belt, especially during the COVID pandemic. She was very, very, she locked down her state right away. She locked down her state, shut down her economy, and wanted the government to pump as much stimulus into the economy as possible. And we can see now that Gretchen Whitmer is taking a much different approach. She's taking more of a bipartisan approach. She's not running to the left. She is running to the center, which is probably a smart move for a general election. But she went to the White House recently with President Donald Trump and actually ended up being in the Oval Office while Donald Trump was signing some executive orders related to the 2020 election, and decided that she was going to cover her face with a binder as if we don't know who you all are. I think that was kind of a weak move. I think it was a really, really dumb decision. I'd own it. I'd own that you're trying to work across the aisle if I was a Democrat right now. I would own the hell out of that. But ultimately, even that aside, I think in a general election, she'd probably be a B-tier candidate. Not great, but you're starting to inch your way up there. Now, looking at someone like an AOC. AOC, I think during the primary, she is, as of right now, is the best position to win the Democrat primary as of today. She raised $10 million, roughly $10 million, like $9.6 million in Q1 of 2025. 64% of those donations came from people that were was the first time they donated to her campaign, and the average campaign donation was $21. Talk about this is a lady who represents a district in New York that voted for her, by 40 points? let's see, it voted for her by, let's see if we can find her. By 40 points, it voted for her. Just so you know, during her entire 2024 re-election campaign, from January of 2023 to November of 24, she raised in total $15 million. She did 2/3 of that in 3 months. She is going across the country with Bernie Sanders, fighting the oligarchy rally. You can see she is really courting to the Bernie Sanders flank of the Democrat Party, really pushing hard on that, but also is appealing to a lot of moderates who want the Democrats to do everything they can to oppose Donald Trump at every single move. Now, granted, that is for the primary. In a general election, she would get smoked. Good luck. Good luck going to places like Pennsylvania and explaining to them why they need to learn new skills because we can't frack in America anymore. Explain to the oil workers in Pennsylvania why they aren't going to be able to feed their families anymore. Go to Michigan. Good luck explaining it. I give credit to Whitmer, and this is why I put her in the B tier, is simply because she understands that there's a constituency in Michigan that is, it's nuanced. It's a purpley state. It's a flip state. It's a swing state. And she figured out how to appeal to a larger portion of the electorate than just the Democrat base, especially when it came to tariffs. And she understands that there's a lot of manufacturing jobs in Michigan. She understands that. And that's why she even came out and said, look, I may not like the way Donald Trump rolled out his tariffs, but at the end of the day, I like the idea of his tariffs. If he actually follows through exactly what he says he's going to do, I like the idea of his tariffs. I may not like a little process here or there, but I like his tariffs. That was why. Good luck, AOC, explaining to the people in Michigan why you want to ship more and more of their jobs overseas. Good luck. Good luck with that. I really wish you the best of luck. Because it's just not going to happen. There's no chance. There is no chance. You're going to see some of the worst margins for Democrats. If you thought Harris was bad in 2024, you don't even know what's about to hit you. She would be horrible. She would be, if we're looking at a Democrat primary, she'd be like right here. But if we're looking at the general election, she'd be right here. The only reason I say she shouldn't be in the race is because, at least if she's in the race, then the GOP has a pretty good chance of winning the election. Looking at Amy Klobuchar in a general election. Amy Klobuchar, she's a senator from Minnesota, very, very popular senator from Minnesota. You look at this, this is Harris, won Minnesota by 4 points. Look at this. She won the state of Minnesota by 16 points in this general election. She ran ahead of Harris by almost 12 points. Double digits right there. And this was one of her worst margins of victory that she's seen in years. In years. Look at this. 2018, she won by 24%. 2012, she won by 34%. 2006, 20%. 2000, okay, that was back when Mark Dayton. I think she only ran in 2006. Look at that. Amy Klobuchar. But ultimately, I think she is a candidate who's willing to work across lines. Look, she's got a lot of agricultural. She understands. I don't think she's a dumb person. I do think she understands the reality of where the Democrat Party is right now. But also, I just don't think she has any backbone. I don't think she should be in this race at all. Look, I think she can do the Democrats a lot of help. And I'm not here to give out help or advice for the Democrats, but she could do a lot of help for the Democrats by staying in the Senate. She is a powerhouse in the Senate. There's no doubt about that. I could definitely see her one day being a majority leader for the Democrats. No doubt about it. 100% can see that happening. We're going to see what's happening, but I don't think she should be in this race to begin with. Now, you're looking at someone like an Andy Beshear. I would have to put Andy Beshear up here either in the B or the A tier. I'm going to have to go with B simply because of name recognition. You think about it. This is a guy who, in a state that Trump won by 30 points, I think he won his initial election by half a point, little under half a point, went on to win again in 2023 by 5 points in a state against a former AG from the state, in a state that voted for Donald Trump just a year later by 30 points. Holy crap. Talking about knowing how to work across the aisle. And I think these more moderate Democrats understand that Democrats are losing on the cultural issues. They are losing on these They are losing on issues like trans issues, immigration issues. They are losing when it comes to they used to be the party of the working class, and they have lost the working class. They've lost huge support among Latino Americans. They're starting to lose support among Black Americans. They've lost huge support among Asian Americans. And he's one of those Democrats who understands that. And he knows what you need to do to work across the aisle. He knows what you have to do, and he knows how to win in deep red states. He knows how to win there. There's no doubt about that. He knows how to win. And I think for that reason, you have to put him up here. You have to agree that with enough market and enough money behind him to market him to the American people. I'm going to screw it. I'm going to put him as an A. Because if he could be marketed properly, I think he could have huge appeal. I think he could win an election. I think he could win in 2028. If he's against a good candidate, it may be close, but I think he could win. Now, Brian Kemp, I think he's a good conservative Republican. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a good conservative Republican, but he shouldn't be in this race. I'm sorry. Brian, you need to run for the Senate, beat John Ossoff. You are very well liked in the state of Georgia. You're one of the most popular governors in the country, in Georgia. You are not meant. The Republican Party at large has a lot against you from what happened in 2020, even though you just happen to be a casualty in what happened in 2020 when Joe Biden won the election. Let's get one thing straight. Joe Biden won in 2020. This whole election denialism, yes, I'm sure did some fraudulent things happen? Yes, just like every other election, but Joe Biden won that race fair and square. Ultimately, Brian Kemp, though, has no business being in this race. He has no business being in this race here. And if someone wants to show me some evidence of some voter fraud that happened, let's see it. I'd really love to see it because you've been in court, 70 times and no one's been able to prove it. Doug Burgum, he's a businessman, former governor of North Dakota. He ran for president in 2024. I don't see him as a top tier candidate. I don't. He's Secretary of the Interior right now. I just don't see him as a highly calibrated candidate. I just don't. I don't think that's who he is. Was he a good executive in North Dakota? Yes. Do I find very much appeal for him nationwide? No. I don't see it at all. Gavin Newsom. Now, Gavin Newsom's an interesting guy because I see him as he could be lethal in a primary, and I think he would struggle in a general election, but ultimately, he doesn't have any morals. He doesn't have any values, so he's a paper tiger. Whatever direction the wind's blowing, that's the way he's blowing. It's as simple as that. I put him in a general election, I got to put either a C or a B. If we had like a C plus or a B minus, I'd probably put him there because I feel like he's a little better than Dean Phillips, but this is my issue. He's a West Coast elitist. He is a really, really terrible governor from the state of California. He pushed some of the most radical transgender policies that we have seen in our history. And for those reasons, I just don't think, but also I think he's one of the few Democrats who is, hey, we're losing. We aren't doing great. We need to change. We need to figure out what we did wrong in 2024. And for those reasons, I think he could be a little lethal, but C is where I'm at for today as of right now. Now we are going to move on to the wonderful governor who I wouldn't want to share a plane seat with or an aisle with, JB Pritzker. So he is the current governor of Illinois right now, and he is, I think, solely for the reason that he is the governor of one of the larger states in America, plus the fact that he's got a lot of money. The guy's got a lot of money. I don't know exactly what his net worth is. I'm sure I can look it up. Let's see if I can figure it out. Let's see. JB Pritzker net worth $3.7 billion according to Forbes. Let's see. Ooh. Wow. A lot of money. A lot of money from the state of Illinois. Wow. 3.7. That's a lot of money you can put at this. A lot of money that you can throw at a presidential election. You telling me with $250 million you couldn't get, self-fund your way to a nomination? Ultimately, though, I think he could be a halfway decent candidate. I'd put him up here as a B. I don't think his policies are this is the issue, is his policies may be as liberal and as bad as they are in California, but the joke isn't about Illinois, it's about California. Nobody makes the joke that, Democrats are trying to turn Minnesota into Illinois. They're trying to turn Minnesota into California, where the wacky lunatic liberals are. So I think there's some public sentiment that maybe he isn't, and especially if he tries to pivot to the middle, he has the opportunity to really frame himself in his own way. He hasn't been boxed in, kind of like I think Gavin Newsom has been boxed into this real, out of touch West Coast liberal, who pushed who turned California into a transgender sanctuary state. He put illegal aliens on the Medi-Cal program, which is Medicaid in California, and now needs a loan of, $6 billion from the federal government to keep it afloat for the next 6 months. They have huge deficits, but somehow have all these huge social programs. So I think J.B. Pritzker has a little more room, political capital to work with, and that's why I'd put him at a B. Now, JD Vance, it's a very nuanced right now with him. I'm gonna put him at an A right now. And why I say an A, I think he's very well spoken. I think he can be a great replacement for Donald Trump at the top of the ticket. I'd much rather have JD Vance my president than Mike Pence. So if you're talking about, God forbid something happens to Donald Trump, but if I had to choose between it during his first or second term, it'd be his second term all day long. All day long. JD Vance is a way, way better candidate. But also, there have been some things that have alarmed me a little bit recently, especially when it comes to his foreign policy views with these leaked signal group chats showing that JD Vance has a much, much more, how would you say this, isolationist view of foreign policy. He doesn't believe that we should be getting involved in stuff around the world if it doesn't directly involve the United States, which is, I think is very short-sighted. And then you have other people in the administration who are America first. They have peace through strength foreign policy. We still want to be the world leader. We don't want to be an isolationist. We want to be the leader of the world, but everybody else needs to pay their fair share. Obviously the big one was with the Houthis. JD Vance didn't feel like or thought that we should delay an attack on the Houthis because they were attacking ships that were going through the Suez Canal. Okay, here's the reality. Europe sends a lot of stuff through there. Yes, should Europe pay more for their defense? Absolutely. And I think they know that they need to pay more, and they are going to start to pay a lot more now, especially under Trump. But to say that we shouldn't have done that or that we should have held off simply because only 3% of American trade goes through there, I think is really short-sighted. I think it's a very short-sighted comment to make, or an idea to have, simply because it does still at the end of the day indirectly affect us. It indirectly affects the United States. For the same reason, yes, put in tariffs on other countries. Does it directly affect us? No. Does it indirectly affect us? Absolutely. Are you kidding me? It indirectly affects us in a million different ways. Whether it is our trade relationship with them, whether it is, we saw that the stock market, the stock started to come down quite a bit. The S&P 500, the Dow Jones retracted, 10% over the span of 2 or 3 days. But the issue is that bond prices weren't going up at the same time. Typically, when stock prices start to drop, when there is something, people start to move out of stocks, they move into bonds, which causes the price of bonds to go up. Well, we saw bonds and stocks dropping, what does that mean? People are taking their money out of stocks and they're not putting it into bonds. They're either holding it or putting it into other economies. That's not okay. And so I think he's very well spoken. I think there's a lot of policies I agree with. I feel like he can communicate the Trump agenda a lot better than Trump can at sometimes. And for those reasons, I think he'd be a great candidate. But on the foreign policy front, I have a little issue with the isolationist approach to things. And so we're going to see. But also, I think he's got a great story to tell. He's the child of a drug addict who worked his way through law school, became a Marine, became a senator, became a venture capitalist, became the vice president of the United States. That's one hell of a story to tell. One hell of a story to tell. Now, moving on to Jon Ossoff. Jon Ossoff is a junior senator, or I guess I don't even know if he's the junior or senior because they're both elected at the same time, but the senator from Georgia. He was elected, beat David Perdue back in 2020 in a runoff election, a really unfortunate election that allowed Democrats to take control of the they had a trifecta in power in Washington, D.C. And as you can see right here, he beat David Perdue by about 1.5 points here. It's going to be a tough election, and especially if you see someone like Brian Kemp running. I don't even know why this guy name is being considered as a potential nominee. Okay, yeah, he's a young guy. That's about it. He's a young guy. Okay, so your name shouldn't even be in this consideration here. And for that matter, same thing with Raphael Warnock. This guy shouldn't even be. Raphael Warnock would have lost. He would have lost if the Republicans were smart in 2020 too. Because what did they do? They nominated Herschel Walker. Look at this right here. We had so many other people. You could have had Chris Carr. You could have had Doug Collins. You could have had, not Brian Kemp, but you could have had David Perdue. Now, David Perdue ran for governor, but he should have ran for Senate because he would have won this race. 100% he would have won this race here. And, poor candidate quality is the only reason Raphael Warnock he's the only reason he's a senator still. The only reason he won in 2020 was because it was a runoff and because Trump was denying the election. That's why. But there's no reason he should have won in 2022. With a good candidate, he would have lost this election. No doubt in my mind he would have lost. Just the same thing with Mark Kelly. Why the hell was Blake Masters in this election? Blake Masters should have been nowhere near this election. But that's what we're... So, along with him, should not be in this race here. Now, looking at someone like Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro is the governor of Pennsylvania. Popular, one of the most popular governors in America right now. You can see that in a state that went Trump, Biden, Trump, voted for Shapiro by 15 points. 15 points. Now, granted, is that a little bit down from where it was in 2018 when Tom Wolf was the Democrat, not nominee, but was the governor from Pennsylvania? Yeah, you can say so, sure. But also, Democrats used to have like 1.1 million voter registration advantage in the state. And now they barely have, I don't even think they have 100,000. They've made like 70,000 or 80,000. And this is a state that voted for President Trump by almost 2 points, voted for Biden by a point, voted for Trump by a little under a point. At the same time, when you're looking in here, it voted for Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro is a very charismatic young candidate. He was in line to be VP. My theory is that he declined to be VP because he thought that, I'm on land right now. Why would I get on a sinking ship? Why would I get onto a ship that's taking on water right now? I honestly think if I'm a Democrat, I'm looking at Josh Shapiro. I think he could win in a general election. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take part of that back. I'm going to put him in an A. I think he would be a great candidate, but ultimately, I think there would be a large faction of the party that doesn't vote for him because he's Jewish. He's pro-Israel. There's a large faction of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party you're starting to see that doesn't want to see loyalty with Israel. That they don't. That think that Israel is the puppet master. But I think there's a lot of people in the Democrat Party that makes up the base that would struggle to vote for someone who is pro-Israel. And not even just pro-Israel, but someone who's just anti-Hamas, the Palestinian terrorist, anti-that. But he's very popular. He's very charismatic. He's very well spoken. He's a good-looking guy too. I'm right leaning. I'm right leaning, and trust me, I think he's not attractive like physically, but like as far as his policies are much more attractive, and he's kind of more of a common sense governor. He understands that the Democrats are losing the culture wars. He's choosing not to pick the 20 side of these 80-20 issues that Democrats keep boxing themselves into. I think he'd be a very formidable candidate. Now, Kamala Harris. I think Kamala Harris for a 2028 run would be somewhere between a B and a C. I have to say a C. As of right now, most polling has her leading it, but that's only because they recognize the name. They recognize her name. She's the most recent Democrat who is leading the ticket. It's just as simple as that. She was the Attorney General from California. She was a senator from California. She went on to be vice president and then was the Democrat nominee for 3 months of the 2024 election. And she spent $1.5 billion and lost all 7 swing states. Look at this. This is what $1.5 billion as a Democrat gets you. What does it get? Trump plus 5. Trump plus 3. Trump plus 2. Trump plus 3. Trump plus 1.7. Trump 1.5. Trump 1. That's what you're getting. That's what. Oh, okay. Look at this. Look at this. From Trump 2016, she flipped Nebraska 2nd Congressional District. Oh, whoop-de-dee. Oh, from 2016, she expanded the margin here. But look at this. She had some of the worst performances ever. Look at this. Hawaii, 23 points. 29 points in 2020. California, 20 points. Look back in 2020, 29 points. Look at New York, 12 points for Harris, 23 points for Biden. Look at this. Vermont, 35 points for Biden, 30 points for Harris. Look at this. New Jersey. New Jersey only voted for Harris by 6 points. 6 points. They voted for Biden by 15. 15 points. This is just asinine, to be 100% honest with you. This is what $1.5 billion got you. And there's this theory among Democrats that if Kamala Harris would have had, first of all, if she were to run in a primary, she'd lose the primary. Let's get one thing clear. Second of all, if in this crazy world that doesn't exist, that Kamala Harris gets the nomination, there's this theory with Democrats that they think that if Kamala Harris had more time on the campaign trail, she would have done better. No. I think if she had more time on the campaign trail, she would have done worse. She would have had more time to expose herself. The mainstream media and the Democrats covered up for her for 90 days or 100 days, however long she was in the race. They put this perfect little, this bubble around her and didn't let anything bad get in this bubble. She was inauthentic. Nobody looked at her and thought she was an authentic candidate, myself included. Yes, she had some enthusiasm, but when Biden was when you literally had a dead person as your nominee, it would, like, the baseline, she was the baseline for what enthusiasm should have been for the Democrats. Because you had a dead candidate, a literal dead candidate running. So that's why I put her, I just don't think she could win an election. I just don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. Now, someone like a Pete Buttigieg is kind of interesting. I see him as a little bit more of a formidable candidate. I see him definitely as a B-tier candidate. Look, he ran in 2020, won the Iowa caucus, almost won the New Hampshire primary. He's a homosexual. He likes choo-choo trains. He's been on the national stage now for 5 years. Young Democrats like him. The base loves him. He would drive out the base. I think he could win over some moderate voters, even though I don't think he's moderate. I don't think he's moderate at all. But I think he could win over moderate voters. I think there's a lot of moderate voters that, independents, even some disenfranchised Republicans that may be like, you know what? I think this is worth my vote right here. And I think he would actually fare halfway decent. I don't know if he'd win, but I think he'd fare a lot better than Harris. He would have put up a much better fight. And now Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, I'm just going to tell you right now, he is my creme de la creme for 2024 or 2028. I agree with him almost across the board. Unilaterally, I think his only liability he's got two liabilities. His charisma and his views on abortions. Although I agree with him 100% on abortions, and I may even be more pro-life than Ron DeSantis is. No abortions. I'm more pro-life than Ron DeSantis is. And he's the one who signed a 6-week abortion ban into law in Florida. But the way he governed, he did over the last 8 years or 6 years to the Florida state government what Trump is now doing in his second term to the federal government. He fired everyone and appointed his hand-picked people to lead agencies in the state of Florida. He was unapologetically passing some of the most conservative legislation that America has ever seen. Now, I think his charisma is an issue, and I think 2024 showed that, and I think that 2028, if he can really pull it together, that could be a big positive for him. I think there's a lot of improvement that he can that I think he can do. He has a lot of improvement, but ultimately, I think, and simply, I'd put him right here. I would have JD Vance right here. If it wasn't for his little foreign policy debacle, I would have him right here. But because of his foreign policy debacle, I have him right here as just an A candidate right now, simply because foreign policy is very, very important to me. A candidate's foreign policy means a lot to me when I'm analyzing them. A lot. It's like we're talking top 3 or 4 things I'm looking at. But at the end of the day, I think Ron DeSantis would be the best candidate to run for the Republicans. I think he would win. I think he'd win like there's no tomorrow. You look at what he did to Florida. This was a purple state. This was a purple state, shall I tell you. A state that, go back to 2018, barely voted for DeSantis by a half a point. Barely voted for him. He was so conservative, passed some of the most conservative legislation we have seen in decades, and he takes a purple state and turns it into a DeSantis plus 20 state. This state then voted for President Trump in the election by 13 points. It voted for Trump by only 3 points in 2020. It barely voted for Trump by a point back in 2016. This was an Obama state twice. An Obama state twice. This was a like hardcore Democrat state. Look at this. Bush barely won it. Then he went on to win it by 5. Look at this. Let's go back to, these are the 80s. Look at the 90s. Gosh, maybe not. Maybe it wasn't. Oh, I'm probably looking at, let's look at some more of these Senate. Look at some of these Senate races you go back, like Bill Nelson. Bill Nelson winning by 22 points there. But ultimately, it's always been a swing state, but still, Ron DeSantis has cemented Florida as a Republican state, as a conservative state. And for those reasons, he's my creme de la creme in this election. Now, Roy Cooper, he's the governor from North Carolina, former governor from North Carolina. He won in 2016 and in 2020, the same elections. Look at this. Trump won 3 points, 1 point, 3 points, 4 points, let's call it. At the same time, Roy Cooper won 4 points and half a point, fourth of a point, in a state that is a nuanced state, a swing state, but ultimately a lean Republican, lean Republican state, you have to say. And he found out how to win at the same time, really getting pulled to the center, pulled himself to the center. And I think for the Democrats, he would be a very good, maybe a B. I don't know. Maybe if there was an A-, I'd put him there. But I think he could be a good candidate in a general election for the Democrats. Ruben Gallego shouldn't even be in this race. This guy name shouldn't even be in the conversation. The only reason that guy is a senator, the only reason he is a senator is because they ran Kari Lake. Look at this. Sinema won by 2 points against Martha McSally. And there was a decent Green Party pull there. Look at this. Sinema won by... The only reason Ruben Gallego is a senator from Arizona is because they ran Kari Lake. If they would have ran any good Republican in the state, he would have lost. In a heartbeat, he would have lost. But this is where we're at right now. Remember, Arizona is the home of people like Jeff Flake and John McCain. It's not this hardcore MAGA place. It's just not. It's not West Virginia. It's not. But this is where we're at right now. Shouldn't even be in the race. Ted Cruz, interesting guy in a general election. I don't know how well he would fare in a general election. I just have to say a B or a C. I think he's really cemented himself as a legendary senator. A legendary senator from Texas, you have to say. But in a general election, do I think that he's going to fare very well? No, I don't think so. It's like, obviously, anyone, it's hard to say because you put anyone at the top of the ticket, you're going to get a lot of support regardless. But relative to the other candidates that could potentially be in the race, I just don't think he would do as well. And now we're going to talk about Tim Walz and then our very own Donald Trump. So Tim Walz, interesting guy. In a weird way. Interesting guy. But how do you say this? He's a weirdo. But The progressives love him. The progressive left loves Tim Walz. And I really don't like to say that, but they love him. You know why? Because he was one of the most progressive governors in America with a very slim majority in the House and Senate in Minnesota, and he passed some of the most radical progressive legislation ever. Priorities that are very critical to Democrats. Stuff they hold very close to their heart. A lot of the social programs, and Walz got it done. You don't have to like what Tim Walz got done, but he got stuff done at the end of the day. But ultimately, I think his 2024 run really did hurt him. I think, I'd probably say he would do better than Kamala Harris in a general election if he were to be the nominee, but I also don't see them putting him as the nominee. But I think if he got there, but I also think he's just kind of a moron. I think he's kind of a bumbling idiot, he's kind of that Midwestern folksy grandpa, that weirdo who, I don't think he really makes people that excited. I don't think people are energized by him. I just don't think they are. Now, our very own Donald Trump, we're going to have to move on to. Now, in a general election, I really, really do hate to do this, but Donald Trump should not be in this race. Donald Trump has been in the national spotlight for 12 years. Donald Trump will be, 83 at the end of his term? Which would mean if he was running in 28, he would be, 87 at the end of his third term? Donald Trump should not be in this race. He just shouldn't be. We need to pass the torch along. Now, granted, do I think that there are some positives? If you're asking how he's going to fare in a general election, I think he'd be like an A, or I think an A. I think the Trump name just pulls a lot of low propensity voters out from the woodwork. I feel like DeSantis can kind of pull on those low propensity voters, but Trump can really pull on those low propensity voters, and I think he would do well in a general election. I really do. But a lot of it's going to have to do, how does he do over the next 4 years? What is he able to do? And we're going to see what happens, but ultimately, I think in a general election, I think he could win again. I think it'd be a lot tighter. I think especially if the Democrats put a younger candidate in there, maybe he won't win. If they decided to go with Kamala Harris again, or they decided to go with even a Gavin Newsom or a Tim Walz, I think Trump would beat the hell out of him. Being 100%, I think he'd beat the hell, but he shouldn't be in the race. Trump, we love you. We appreciate what you did, but your time has passed. The time is over in 2028. So let me know what your thoughts are down below. Is there anybody else you'd like me to add in here who we should be looking at for a presidential candidate? Is there a tier you'd switch? Is there, maybe would someone in here put AOC up with Ron DeSantis? Is there someone that would put, Donald Trump as up here? What are your thoughts? Let me know. Who would you change in here? So that's going to wrap things up for today, folks. We will catch you next time.